Faber sniffed the book. Do you know that books smell like nutmeg or some spice from a foreign land? I loved to smell them when I was a boy. Lord, there were a lot of lovely books once, before we let them go. Faber turned the pages. Mr. Montag, you are looking at a coward. I saw the way things were going a long time back. I said nothing. I'm one of the innocents who could have spoken up and out when no one would listen to the guilty. But I did not speak, and thus became guilty myself. And when finally they set the structure to burn the books using the firemen, I grunted a few times and subsided, for there were no others grunting or yelling with me by then. Now, it's too late. Faber closed the Bible. Well, suppose you tell me why you came here. Nobody listens anymore. I can't talk to the walls because they're yelling at me. I can't talk to my wife. She listens to the walls. I just want someone to hear what I have to say, and maybe if I talk long enough, it'll make sense, and I want you to teach me to understand what I read. Faber examined Montag's thin, blue-jowled face. How did you get shaken up? What knocked the torch out of your hands? I don't know. We have everything we need to be happy, but we aren't happy. Something's missing. I looked around. The only thing I positively knew was gone was the books I'd burned in 10 or 12 years, so I thought books might help. You were a hopeless romantic, said Faber. It would be funny if it were not serious. It's not books you need. It's some of the things that once were in books. The same things could be in the parlor families today. The same infinite detail and awareness could be projected through the radios and televisions, but are not. No, it's not books at all you're looking for. Take it where you can find it. And in old photograph, records, old motion pictures, and in old friends. Look for it in nature and look for it in yourself. Books were only one type of receptacle where we stored a lot of things we were afraid we might forget. There is nothing magical in them at all. The magic is only in what books say, how they stitched the patches of the universe together into one garment for us. Of course you couldn't know this. Of course you still can't understand what I mean when I say all this. You are intuitively right. That's what counts. 3 things are missing. Welcome back to the channel. That was an excerpt from Fahrenheit 451. No, I have to tell you, when I listen to conversations about dystopian futures, and this book is never mentioned among the list. There's Animal Farm, there's Orwell's 1984, or Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. This book is never there. They never talk about it. Pay attention to that. Ask yourself, why were the words I just read conspicuously absent from nearly every single discussion? I would say errant discussion about dystopia. No, this book was more prescient than them all, in my opinion. Ray Bradbury is an American author. I don't remember. I think he died in the 60s or something. Excellent author. He penned this book. It's about a guy named Guy Montag, who's a firefighter. And firefighters have taken on an ironic meaning. They actually burn illegal paraphernalia, old books, art. If you've ever watched the movie Equilibrium, the firefighters act like the grammaton clerics from that film. They destroy all these things that might remind people of those things that were truncated out of society long ago. All of those inveterate sort of institutions, books, lessons of life, parables, the Bible, all these sorts of things have been destroyed and annihilated. And in place of it, you have this consumer culture. And I know that there's a little irony in that, being that you're watching, if you're watching this, a video of a man talking about it through the very contraption that is sort of being discussed here. So Guy Montag is a firefighter. He goes to work one day. He annihilates this house. There's this whole backstory about how Ben Franklin founded the firefighters, and firefighters never actually put out fires. They always lit them. In this future that they inhabit, they rewrote the histories to that degree. And what happens is they have this fireproofing material on everything. So firefighters became unnecessary. And in their place, you have men who are needed to actively burn things down and not prevent them from being burned down. Symbolic of an institution that was once noble being taken over by men with vices instead of virtues, who are not godly, who do not care about their fellow man or the truth, and who sacrifice those things. And that's all emblematic of that. So anyway, as he's on his way home from work, he runs into this sort of vivacious, youthful girl. I think she's 15, 16 or something. Her name is Clarice. And she represents this spirited, youthful generation of what could be. She comes from this family you can tell they read books. And Guy Montag gets annoyed with her, and he's kind of like, get out of here. Why are you even home or walking around so late? And she sort of captures his heart in a fatherly way or a daughterly way. And he finds himself really caring about her well-being. And she just breaks him down essentially by asking questions. She's so curious. She asks all these questions, and he realizes after being asked enough questions, it's basically her epistemic humility and curiosity gets him to a point where he realizes he can't answer, and then he gets mad and snaps at her. But then afterwards he goes, "Hey, you're not mad at me. I'm sorry, I lost my temper." She weakens his anger, his resolve to be angry, and gets him to understand that something's wrong. And that's effectively what sets him off. So he ends up going home. His wife, named Mildred, has tried to commit suicide. She's taken an empty bottle of pills by her. And they have this thing called the family, and it's on all the walls. It's basically, just picture all your walls are playing different programs, television. All your walls are showing the Kardashians and whatever the modern day equivalent of that would be. I don't even know anymore. If you remember Jersey Shore, I'm dating myself, but you would have like Jersey Shore on one wall and Kardashians on another wall, and they call it the family. And it's all this programming that essentially is going on. And if you pay a special price, you can get them to send you a little earpiece or something, a module that you can stick into the processing unit of this technology. And what will happen is the people will address you by name, and you'll feel like you're part of the family. It's sort of like a modern day super chat in a sense. And so anyway, his wife is dying suicide. And as these guys come in, he calls the hospital or whatever emergency line. These two guys come in. None of them are a medical doctor. And Montag is sitting there kind of upset by that. What ends up going on is they pump her stomach with this technology. They say it's like a snake. It simultaneously cleanses her blood while it's also doing this thing, and it's pumping her stomach. They take the fluids out. And what happens is there's a unique or an interesting conversation here where these men are describing this as being their 9th or 10th call that night. These are happening all the time, and it's a case of show, don't tell. The people are unwell. The people are so, on paper, just like Montag said, we've got all the leisure time in the world. We should be happy. I don't understand. And that's because they're missing something. They're missing logos, okay? Or logos. And what's happening is these people have no purpose. There's no purpose. There's no need to toil. There's no need to look into the truth of things. It's better that we just hide and live this fantasy, okay? Meanwhile, Mildred is saved. They talk about, they're very apathetic in the conversation. It really pisses Montag off. And what ends up happening is they leave. Montag talks to his wife, and he softens his tone towards her and realizes, Mildred, we don't really talk anymore. We're not really close as we used to be. And he's trying to have this tender moment with her, and she's just not getting it. He's trying to find out what's wrong. She's just denying. She's lying about what happened. Oh, the pill bottle slipped back or whatever. And she's content to just pretend everything's fine when it's not fine. Montag goes on this quest I want to know what's wrong. So in the next time he goes to burn some books, he takes some of them. He starts to read them. He doesn't quite understand them. And back at the firehouse, a man named Beatty, I think it's Beatty, it could be Beatty, but I'll just say Beatty. Don't get on me for the pronunciations. So Beatty is one of the most interesting characters that I've ever read about. He is the commanding officer of Montag, and he sort of hints throughout the story that he knows what Montag is doing, stealing books and reading them. And Montag is doing this thing where he's quoting poetry. And so the other guys at the station one night are all sitting there playing poker. And Montag is with them, and they're all citing this poetry, kind of looking at him with this knowing smile on their face, as if to say, hey, are you going to fess up that you're reading? And they're sort of doing the nod, nod, wink, wink. Hey, we've read the books too. And Beatty at one point comes over to his house and tells him, hey, every firefighter gets curious sometimes. Heck, even I got curious, and I took a book home and read it. The important thing was that I took the book back and burned it the next day. We always give everyone the leeway. We don't want to just destroy our people, do we? He kind of plays it off like he's his friend. It's like the tongue of the serpent is speaking, though. Montag understands that Beatty knows. He tries to bring his wife in on it, but his wife ends up betraying him, and she can't handle it. His wife represents the woman that's just trapped and ensconced in this world. She cannot escape it. It's become who she is. And some of this should be striking home with you if you have you lived in the last 5, 10, 20 years, you know. She takes a very flippant attitude towards the things that Montag says and does, especially with the books. So Montag finds this old professor named Faber, and that's the guy you were hearing me read about in the beginning. And they start to hatch this plan. We have to find the resistance. Now, I haven't said it to this point, but throughout this book, you're hearing reports on the news station of a war going on in the background. They don't tell you what sides. They kind of play it out like, our troops are winning, it's getting intense. And the reality is, as you find out at the very end, the war is going atrociously for whatever nation, country, well, it'd be America, but it's really, really turned on them badly. And I'm fast forwarding now. The girl Clarice gets killed. Montag he goes on this journey of, I'm going to take these books and I've decided this is bigger than me. I have to preserve them. And so what he does is he memorizes parts of the book of Job, the book of Ecclesiastes. He memorizes these things, and he goes to this camp where he finds all these guys who are basically living on the fringes of society. There's these homeless drums that are burning with fire. They're all gathered around it. And he says, hey, we've got someone who's got the book of Job and Ecclesiastes here. And the guy's asking, I don't remember his name, but he asks him, what do you bring to the table, Montag? And that's where he says, Job and half of Ecclesiastes or something like that. And everyone gets excited because only one other guy has Ecclesiastes and no one has Job yet. So he's brought something new to the table for these people. And they're all remembering these ideas. And basically we're going to hide out till this war is over. Then we're going to write this down and we're going to reemerge. And at the end of the book, what ends up happening is Beatty causes Montag, because Mildred rats him out, his wife rats him out, he returns home, and this thing called the Hound comes after him. The Hound represents, I don't know, like a hellhound or something. It's almost like black magic fused with technology. I'm saying that. The book doesn't say that. I'm saying that. And it's this monstrosity of a machine. And they loose it on Montag, and he goes up against it. He ends up burning Beatty to death. But before Beatty goes, they have this most interesting conversation. Montag could not move. A great earthquake had come with fire and leveled the house, and Mildred was under there somewhere, and his entire life under there, and he could not move. The earthquake was still shaking and falling and shivering inside him, and he stood there, his knees half bent on, wow, voice crack. His knees half bent under the great load of tiredness and bewilderment and outrage, letting Beatty hit him without raising a hand. Montag, you idiot. Montag, you damn fool. Why did you really do it? Montag did not hear. He was far away. He was running with his mind. He was gone, leaving this dead, soot-covered body to sway in front of another raving fool. "Montag, get out of there," said Faber. Montag listened. Beatty struck him a blow on the head that sent him reeling back. The green bullet, in which Faber's voice whispered and cried, fell on the sidewalk. Beatty snatched it up, grinning. He held it half in, half out of his ear. Montag heard the distant voice calling, "Montag, you all right?" Beatty switched the green bullet off and thrust it in his pocket. "Well, so there's more here than I thought. I saw you tilt your head, listening. First, I thought you had a seashell. But when you turned clever, later, I wondered. We'll trace this and drop it on your friend." "No," said Montag. He twitched the safety catch on the flamethrower. Beatty glanced instantly at Montag's fingers, and his eyes widened the faintest bit. Montag saw the surprise there, and himself glanced back to his hands to see what new thing they had done. Thinking back later, he could never decide whether the hands or Beatty's reaction to the hands gave him the final push toward murder. The last rolling thunder of the avalanche stoned down about his ears, not touching him. Beatty grinned his most charming grin. "Well, that's one way to get an audience. Hold a gun on a man and force him to listen to your speech. Speech away. What'll it be this time? Why don't you belch Shakespeare at me, you fumbling snob? There is no terror, Cassius, in your threats, for I am armed so strong in honesty that they pass by me as an idle wind, which I respect not. How's that? Go ahead now, you second-hand litterateur. Pull the trigger." He took one step toward Montag. Montag only said, "We never burned right." "Hand it over, Guy," said Beatty with a fixed smile. And then he was a shrieking blaze, a jumping, sprawling, gibbering mannequin, no longer human or known, all writhing flame on the lawn, as Montag shot one continuous pulse of liquid fire on him. Beatty is such an awesome character. That's just a taste of what he's like. Beatty's whole thing before this scene plays out, he tells Montag, "We've all been curious. We've all read the books, but there's nothing in them." Beatty gets caught on, I got to grab a drink of water. Excuse me. So Beatty's whole thing is, oh, that's better. Beatty's entire thing is that he reads the books himself, but he's not convinced. He's not converted in the way that Montag is. Beatty reads these books and is decided that the books all disagree with each other. And he's read a lot of them, as you just saw. He's quoting Shakespeare. He knows all this stuff. And the other guys at the fire station as well. He's just not converted. He's like, there's something wrong. None of them agree. There's nothing to make sense out of all of this. So what Beatty lacks is context. He lacks that historical meta-narrative. And that's the problem, right? He's essentially a postmodernist who doesn't see what Montag sees. And so I could probably shut it down there. We're pushing 20 minutes. This is one of the best novels that I've read. You know, I could gush over this novel. I read this in, I want to say 4 hours. It's not long. It's 120 pages or something. Yeah, it's 158 pages. So you could read this relatively quick. I read it in several hours. I couldn't stop. It was phenomenal. This will really expand your mind. And working through some of these philosophies, this book is the answer to the question of, why does history matter? Who cares if people don't know about some war that happened 100 years ago or 200 years ago? Why is that even relevant? This book is the answer to that question. So if you've been with me this whole time, we're coming up on 19 minutes, 20 seconds here. Yeah. God bless you. Pick this up, Ray Bradbury. Highly, highly recommend it. Even though, I want to say this before I go, even though I've ruined the story for you, I didn't really ruin it. The magic of this and the greatness of this read is the internal critiques. You're asking yourself these questions and working through them as you read this. And that's where the growth comes in. This is a really accessible read. I would say, and I don't want to put someone off and say, oh, this is a beginner's book. Therefore, if you're able to read high philosophy, disregard it. No. Everyone should read this book. I understand you probably read this in middle school or something, because I did too, and I just picked it up again last year. But I highly recommend this. You should grab this, do yourself a favor, read it on some Sunday afternoon, and God bless you all.